Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Are you ready, Beans? I can't hear you. Oh, who posts funny podcasts on Spotify? Who has hair of orange and loves beans? He does. If lovable nonsense is something you wish, then drop on Spotify. Listen to this. Ready? Nerdstalgic podcast. Nerdstalgic podcast. Nerdstalgic podcast. Nerdstalgic podcast. Do. Wah! Oh God, what is my life? Okay. Howdy Beans, hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good. Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast. I am your host Luke. Hope you're doing well as per usual. I know that wasn't the most when I actually sat and wrote down that sort of song, and I rehearsed it a few times, and it sounded good, and then when I started to record it, I started to regret it, but then I was like, let's keep going. So I hope you liked that. It would have been better with music in the background, but I wouldn't have been able to get the rights to the music, sadly, so I had to make my own up as I went along. But I hope you've all found that funny, and liked it, and it kind of got you in the spirit and in the mood for today's episode. So before I get into it, and we calm down a bit before I really get into the actual, because I'm full of beans and I'm quite happy at the moment. So to calm us down before we get into the actual review, I just want to say of the business side of it, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to keep up to date on all the things that I do there, all the games that I'm playing, all the things that I'm watching, any things that I'm reviewing, thoughts and feelings, all that sort of jazz. Follow me on Twitter and you'll get up to date straight away on there. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Comment means a lot. If you're not following me on YouTube, I am the Nerdstalgic podcast on YouTube. Same logo, same sort of image and all that, so it should be easy to find. Go on there, subscribe. Readers help out, especially liking and commenting. They are essential and they mean a lot to me. So yeah, on to the review. So today I'm going to be talking about Spongebob Battle for Bikini Bottom, the Rehydrated edition. Now, one thing that I want to say about this game is I missed out on this game when it first came out back in I think 2004, 2005 on the PlayStation and Xbox. I missed out on it. I'd always been a SpongeBob fan. I've always liked it. But this is one of those games that I've always wanted to play. And I remember when it was on about doing a remaster of it, I was really, really excited. And again, it's not one that I didn't get into quite recently. But it was one that I was like, okay, I've got to give this a go. It looks really fun. I love SpongeBob. Got to jump into it. So before I get on to actually story time about that, because I'm a bit of a hodgepodge at the moment, because I'm still quite really hyper and really excited, and still can't believe that I just did a really silly introduction. I like it, but I still can't believe I did it. So I'm a bit mismatched at the moment. So I'm going to try and reel it back in, take a breather, take a calmer, and we're going to start again. And this time we're going to start off at the beginning. So I'm going to talk about Purple Lamp, the creators of this game, and all the things that they've made. So Purple Lamp is a studio under the name of THQ Nordic. THQ Nordic are the publisher, and Purple Lamp make games under that name, under the name Purple Lamp for THQ Nordic. They've had contributions to Sea of Thieves. They helped with porting the game over to Steam. Purple Lamp cooperated with the team at Rare to get Sea of Thieves ready for Steam. Besides porting the game to Steam, one focal point was to enable cross-platform sessions, allowing players to team up regardless of which platform they were using. So they had their hands help. They helped with Sea of Thieves. They also published the game, the Guild 3. I've never played any of the Guild games, so there's not much I can say about them. as well as quite recently. So they did SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Are you ready, kids? The real cult classic is back, faithfully remade in sponge-tastic splendor. Play as SpongeBob, Patrick, or Sandy, and show the evil plankton that crime pays even less than Mr. Krabs. Ha 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 ha. And then recently, which has kind of got me really even more excited, and hopefully I'll be able to get around to playing this game a lot sooner and be able to review it for you, Beans, is SpongeBob SquarePants, The Cosmic Shake, wish granting mermaids tears in the hands of SpongeBob and Patrick. What could possibly go wrong? Sure, the very fabric holding the very universe very together could come very undone, opening up portals into wish worlds full of knights, cowboys, pirates, and prehistoric snails. But that's nothing everyone. But that's nothing everyone's favorite sponge can't handle with the right cosmic costume. And it looks good. Like, that game looks amazing. So that's a bit of a sort of introduction to Purple Lamp Studios. They're in Vienna. I love what they're doing. I love what they're doing with SpongeBob. Again, I haven't played the Cosmic Shake yet. I've only played this game, the Battle for Bikini Bottom. If I can take a gauge of how much I enjoyed this game and my thoughts and feelings on it, and I can only imagine that the Cosmic Shake is just as amazing. I've heard all the reviews are really, really good as well. So I think I'd like to see them do more, either more SpongeBob games or more sort of Nickelodeon games. I'd like them to sort of be that studio for THQ Nordic. But also at the same stage, I'd like to see what other things that they would do, any original IP from them. So they colour me interested, shall I say. I'm quite interested to see what it is that they would decide to do in the future. If they wanted to do their own thing, or if they wanted to do more sort of Nickelodeon type games. Also, as I mentioned, THQ Nordic, formerly known as THQ. I love THQ. I really, really do. One thing that I love about THQ is they're doing everything that I want from a publisher, that I want from a studio. They're looking at their IP and they're going, what have we got? Not just new, but what have we got in the archives? What old IPs do we still own, that we still have the rights to, that we can make games for? And most I couldn't see like somebody like Activision or something like EA or Sony or any of those ones going back and being like, oh, we have the rights to an old SpongeBob game that was a cult classic from the early 2000s. Yeah, let's remake that. I just don't see those companies doing that, but THQ do. They brought back Destroy Humans. Again, a fantastic IP, fantastic series, but I never thought that I'd ever see the light of day of that series again. I thought that was one of those that just came and went. So that's what I love about THQ. Like, they've got their fingers in so many different pies, and they've got so many games from the past, so many Cartoon Network games, Nickelodeon games. They had Star Wars, they did Wayne's World, they did loads of other different games. They've got the Dark Side of series, they've got Wreckfest, they've got the Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Trying to think what else. They've got the Monster Jam games. These are all sort of modern games as well as a couple of old ones. But they've got the Blob. If you ever played the Blob, that was fun. That was like a painting sort of game that I played when I was younger. They've got Recall, Black Mirror, the Baja game, Super Lucky Tail. They've just got loads. And even like even classic one that I haven't seen in a long time, but I think they're remastering it or they're redoing it, is Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy. So they are a company that have been around for a long time. THQ itself has been around since the beginning of the 90s, really. And then obviously they went bankrupt and then they kind of reformed to THQ Nordic. And THQ Nordic is now sort of not just being like, what new IP and not what new games we can release, but they're also going back in the past and being like, that worked, that was a good game, people are liking that. And even now, because of the success of the SpongeBob games, they're asking their players, they're asking their fans and being like, what other games from our past do you want to see? You know what I mean? What other games do you want us to look into? What other Nickelodeon games? Do you want us to look into Cartoon Network games? I'd like to see a Jimmy Neutron game. You know what I mean? I'd like to see what they did with like the old Jimmy Neutron games. I'd like to see the Codename Kid Next Door games come back. The Ed and Eddie games come back. You know what I mean? Like these sort of games that they did that came out on like the early sort of like consoles and the early sort of generations of the early 2000s. I'd like to see the Danny Phantoms. You know what I mean? Those sort of games. So there's a lot that they could do. I just hope that they sort of, these games are successful. And this is why, another reason why I wanted to do this review. And it wasn't just to kind of review SpongeBob because I love SpongeBob, but the other underlying reason behind it was the kind of hope to kind of get people more aware of these games, so people would go out, play them, and help fund these companies, and to let sort of Purple Lamp as well as THQ Nordic, like, look, there is a fan base for them. People do want them. People do play them. People are talking about them. So hopefully they will then look into doing a lot more. So that's my hope, not just from talking about this game and hopefully people wanting to play it and enjoy it, and also talk about my thoughts and feelings, but also to spread the word that, like, people are interested in this game, and hopefully get some of you beings interested in wanting to go out and buy it and give it a go. So that's me talking about the studio. As for the story time, going back to what I said before that bit when I was a bit more manic and less calm as I am now. As I mentioned, like, this is the game that I missed out growing up, and it was one that I always wanted to go back to. Like, this game is very sort of like, it's a cult classic, and the reason it's such a cult classic is because it lived on after it sort of like went off. Because most games don't live that long, especially sort of the older sort of games, or sort of one and done sort of games. They kind of come, they go. The first sort of lot of people come in, play them, buy them, and then they do move on. And that's just the way that game design goes, and that's just the way that most games and that sort of things are. So there's no real difference there. But what kept this game alive was that speedrunners, people that like to play games and try to complete them in the fastest time, speedrunners really hooked onto this game because of the platforming, because of the how easy it was and how much of a challenge it was, and how there were so many ways to kind of not cheat the game, because that's kind of not a best thing to say, but kind of like the exploits that were in this game, that you could mean that you could complete it a lot faster, that you could get from one part to the next a lot quicker, and speedrunners kept this game alive. And if I remember correctly, I think it was a video that went up on YouTube of a bloke that managed to complete this game I can't remember the actual time, but I think he managed to complete it under an hour, under 2 hours, and he beat the world record time. And then loads of people kept going back to this game and watching how this guy did it, and how he managed to what tricks that he used, and other people tried to replicate it and try to beat him. And obviously, all this hype and all these people talking about it, obviously it trickled down to THQ. They realised actually there's something in this. There's a lot of people that still play it, not just speedrunners, but there are a lot still fans of this game. A lot of people still talking about it, and again, out come people of the woodwork who haven't played it in a long time, being like, oh, I remember that game, who did videos on it, did reviews, did retrospectives, and eventually hype came back. And THQ Nordic, again, as clever as they are, was like, we're onto something here. Get on it. Get on to doing remastering that game. And they did. They remastered it, and the game sold well. It's doing well. A lot of people love it. It did so well, they made a brand new SpongeBob game, because they was like, well, if the Rehydrated Battle for Bikini Bottom worked, why not let's make a new SpongeBob game? You know what I mean? So here we are today. But I've played a few of the SpongeBob games. I played Truthful Sponge. That one was really, really good. I played that on the original Xbox. Xbox 360, not the original Xbox. Technically, it is kind of the part of the original because I'm old now. And Xbox 360 is classed as retro now, which just makes me feel even older just to admit that. But yeah, so I remember playing that on the Xbox 360. Truthful Sponge was really, really good. There was a few other SpongeBob games. I remember I had the SpongeBob movie game, which was really, really good. But it was hard. And I've said this many, many times when I spoke about video games and sort of movie license games and stuff like that. Any sort of old game, majority of all of them, because they were so short, they had to revamp, sort of ramp up the difficulty. So you'd play the game at first, it'd be easy, it'd be simple, it wouldn't be so hard, anybody could play it, and then as the game would progress, it would progressively either get harder slowly, or it would go from being really easy, then the next mission would just ramp up to 1,000,000 and be absolutely overly difficult and really, really hard. So it was kind of the norm back for those sort of games. You kind of came to expect it. You came to expect a little bit of, a little easiness just to get used to it. And then by the time the game would feel like you're used to how this game plays now, even if you actually are or not, once the game decided that you're used to how this game works now, it would ramp up the difficulty and then that would be it. But that was just mostly because the game was short and they wanted you to get sort of the player wanted to get its money's worth. So instead of you completing it really quickly, if they ramped up the difficulty, you'd spend more time playing it because you'd keep dying and having to restart, that sort of thing. So it was a common thing, and they still kind of do it now, but it was mostly something that was done perpetually, you know, in the past a lot. Um, so with that SpongeBob movie game, again, it was the same thing. Easy at first, and then it just got harder and harder. And eventually, I never completed it, but I enjoyed it. I loved replaying it. And again, I love SpongeBob. Who doesn't love SpongeBob? I grew up with SpongeBob. I grew up with all the old original. Well, I say old. The original episodes. I've watched it many times. I would always watch it. I still watch it now at 25 years old. I know if I wake up at a certain time in the weekend, Monday, Saturday or Sunday, if I wake up, say, like at 10 o'clock and I put on Channel 5, I know there'll be 2 episodes of SpongeBob on there. And again, I'll happily admit that. I love watching SpongeBob. I still do. I still find it funny. It's still, nostalgic to me. So, I'll always be a fan of SpongeBob because it's still ingrained in my childhood. You know what I mean? And I love cartoons anyway. So all of this is just sort of like more just rehashing of my nostalgia, really, to me. Um, so sorry, there's a big plane going over. Do apologise, but if you caught that on the mic. So that's sort of story time. Story time over. Now I'm going to do box and complete. This one's going to be a bit difficult, and I'll explain why. So I got this game for Christmas last year, 2022, off a friend of mine. It was been on my Amazon wish list for ages. I'd been meaning to buy it and get it myself, but never got around to it again. As I mentioned before with the podcast, I've basically spent most of my time going out and actually buying Xbox 360 games. I haven't really bought many Xbox One games because I just wanted to sort of go back, not just for the podcast, but also there was many games in sort of my 360 catalog that I haven't played, and I wanted to go back and play them first because, again, as I've mentioned it before, again, one thing is a downside of Xbox at the moment is the fact of, and again, I'm a big fan of Xbox. I love Xbox. I'm an Xbox fanboy, and I love Game Pass, and I speak the world of Game Pass, but it's having to wait, and so many games nowadays are getting delayed, and so many games are getting pushed back. So it was that fact of, well, I'd rather not sit and wait for this one game that I'm waiting for. Might as well, while I'm waiting, keep myself occupied and kind of give you beans a bit of content and a bit of something to talk about. I'll go back and look at the older sort of games. So I haven't really got around to buying any new games. But that being said, it was on my wish list for ages, and my friend bought it me for Christmas. And when it arrived, this is where it's going to be difficult to do the box and complete, was because I've never had this before at any game or anything that I've ever bought off Amazon. But for some unknown reason, when this game arrived, I didn't get the English version of this game. I got the French version of this game. Now, when I booted the game up, when I put the game into the Xbox and I managed to play it, it was all in English, and that I could change it to French, Spanish, German, Japanese, Korean, Brazil, all that. I could change the language on it, even though the game already came in English. But the funny part is the actual box on itself is all in French. Now I can speak a little French, but it just kind of makes me laugh. Where it's like Bob Le Sponge, Battle for Bikini Bottom, Rehydrated. That's all bits in English. Nickelodeon is in English. Then it's like 4K Ultra HD, all in English. Then you have optimized for Xbox One X, and then on the back, if I turn it around, it's all in French. And I can read French better than I can speak French because I did French at level 1 in school, and I've been learning French a little bit. But it's just funny trying to sort of sit and decipher. So I can read some of it, but not all of it. So I'm going to give it a go. I'm probably going to be wrong. So it's going to go Bob Le Sponge, Patrick El Sandy, Montes ou Melfig Plankton, Q Le Prime, Paris and Courmos, Q M Krabs, which is Mr. Krabs, Bosphorus, Savile Bikini Bottom, Dio Attire, The Robots, Bien sur Sato a La Escapade, Ensor's Vetements. Oh God, I'm getting lost here. I'm not going to carry on because I feel like I'm butchering the French language and I don't want to offend anybody. But But basically, what it says on the back is that you play as Patrick, Sandy, Mr. Krabs. You play as Spongebob, and using these three characters and their different abilities, help stop Plankton and his band of robots to basically save the day, as well as doing platforming and finding collectibles, and each one of them having different abilities. But it made me laugh when I first got it because I've never had a French copy of a game before. And obviously I can read it because I know what it's meant to say, and I can read a little bit of French. But it just kind of made me laugh, and so I can't really do a proper box and complete because I can't read it all. I can read some of it and kind of make an assumption of what I've played. So I just wanted to mention that was a fact of I would do a box and complete, but I kind of can't because the game's in French. Funnily enough, though, the disc is in English. So on the front it's Bob the Sponge. On the front on the disc it's SpongeBob SquarePants, and everything else is in English. All the sort of little small things like all the important things like do not make illegal copies, and all the technical jargon of like this is a copyright of so and so company of this year, blah 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 blah. It's all in English. So it's kind of funny how it's the fact of the case and all that is in French, but the disc and when you actually put the game in, it's all in English. So I just find that a bit funny, and I wanted to mention it because it made me giggle. Anyway, I've been yammering on for 20 minutes now, so I think it's time to get on to review. So I'm going to go on to the review now, have a bit of a breather, have a bit of some water, and I'll be back with you beans shortly. Right, so here we are at the review. So for starters, I want to say that I really enjoyed myself with this game. It's a fun platformer, and I can definitely see why it's so loved and enjoyed by so many, why it became such a cult classic, because it's so much fun. It is a very beautiful game, and again, looking about on it, it's a simple platformer, but it's quite not difficult, but there's a challenge there. There's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The visuals are just beautiful. They've done a fantastic job with the remaster. Well, I'm not sure if it's a remaster or remake, but either way, they've done a fantastic job with it. It looks gorgeous. It plays still wonderful. Um, it just it They did a fantastic job in making me feel like I'm in the cartoon, like I'm actually in an episode of SpongeBob. Everything just looks as I would imagine it to look, to feel. Nothing felt out of place, and there's not a single moment where I sat there and go, "That don't feel like SpongeBob." That don't feel like anything other than I'm in the Bikini Bottom and the bottom of the sea. I'm in an episode of SpongeBob. I'm pretty playing as SpongeBob. Like I'm fully immersed in this world. Everything just feels very well done. A lot of time, a lot of effort's been put into this. This is not like a half baked sort of. This is not a cash grab. You can tell they're not trying to just be like, well, this game was really really popular with speedrunners, and all of a sudden there's been loads of hype on it, so let's quickly like pump out a game just for money. There's none of that. There's none of that feel here. There's none of that fluff. It just feels like generally, if it feels like this team had always wanted to make this game, but was never had the backing whenever it was allowed because there was no hype. And it wasn't until the hype started to grow where they were like, look, see, people still love these SpongeBob games. Can we now make it? Yes, you can make it now, and it feels like a love letter. It just feels like a piece of art. Like they've took it and they really love it. They really enjoy what they're doing. It's like, okay, this is what we can do, not just as a studio, but this is what a SpongeBob game, a next gen SpongeBob game, can be, and this is what it should be and feel like. So it feels wonderful, it plays wonderful, it looks wonderful. Everything about it is just wonderful. The jokes and the dialogue had me giggling. Like generally, I was like a little kid again. Like not every joke landed, but like every there was like they weren't hilarious. Like they weren't like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, sort of like side splitting like on my ass, like laughing my head off. But there was SpongeBob silly. There were puns, there were like fish jokes and stuff like that. It generally made me giggle. I loved it. You know what I mean? It just was like, oh, that's funny. I get that. That's cool. I'm 25, but I'm laughing at kids' jokes. But again, I'm not just easily pleased, but like again, I love these sort of things. I'm the guy that I'm Peter Pan. I'm the guy that never grew up. I still live in Neverland. You know what I mean? So all this is just ringing to my child's heart. And I love it. I love it for that. All the voice cast are here in force, apart from Mr. Krabs. For sadly, I think it was Clancy Brown. I think it does the voice for Mr. Krabs. He's not here, so you've got a sort of voice actor who I want to be nice and say he's trying his best, but even at his best, he sounds nothing like Mr. Krabs. So I don't know why. Like they got everybody else back, but Clancy Brown. Maybe there was a scheduling conflicts; he couldn't come back, or something like that. I'm not sure. So the voice of Mr. Krabs is not there, which it made it a bit jarring and was a bit hard to digest at times. The same for the voice of Mermaid Man was different. I think it was Adam West who did the voice of Mermaid Man. I think it might have been, and if it was, that kind of makes sense. But either way, um, it's a shame to be honest because again, you, Mermaid Man was always a character that I really loved and enjoyed. He made me laugh, and he was very silly. It kind of always made me think of like, how do you get a guy who was once like a superhero and was really smart and clever, like on the level of Batman or Aquaman, even to be more specific, really. And then now he's an old man. He's just a bit of a sort of I don't know, really sort of ah, lost his marble, shall we say? You know, the bouncer's gone out of his bungee to be polite. So that was made me laugh. That was sort of made me giggle. But so it's a shame that the voice actor for Mermaid Man is not here. But Barnacle Boy, his voice actor's there. So at least you have the contrast. Like even if one's not there, the other's there. So it still feels like at home. But like I said, even though it's a bit sort of it doesn't feel like when you hear them talk, like it's hard to digest at times. It's still very much the fact of, it's easily to kind of ignore and just be like, okay, I can see what you're telling me to do. I know the voice is not the same, but I can kind of digest it in such a way where it doesn't sort of like, give me too much of a gut ache and kind of get on with the sort of the level or what I'm being asked to do. So, it's a bit jarring, but it's not overly bad. I loved exploring the levels for shiny objects. In this game, you have collectibles, so you've got shiny objects, which are basically coins that you can use to buy golden spatulas from Mr. Krabs, or you can use it to open up sort of special features in levels. For example, there's a feature in the level where there'll be fishing hook. Sorry, where Spongebob can attach his underpants to, and he can use it as a bungee to collect either golden spatulas or another collectible I'll talk about in a minute, which are Patrick socks, and other shiny objects. So sometimes you can open up areas using the shiny objects for there in other missions, as well as, like I mentioned, buying golden spatulas of Mr. Krabs, which you will need the golden spatulas to progress in the levels. As I mentioned, for the golden spatulas, that you get them through completing levels, completing little side missions for different characters, like Mrs. Puff, for Mr. Krabs, for Squidward. You get them for doing it there, as well as just exploring Bikini Bottom. You'll find some there. As you kind of play each mission, you will unlock new abilities like bowling ball bubbles, or a torpedo bubble, and these will open up new levels in the actual hub world of Bikini Bottom, which then allow you to explore more and find more golden spatulas. And again, you need those to unlock more levels, and eventually I think you need about 75 golden spatulas to open up the boss level at the end to defeat Plankton and complete the game. So you have those golden spatulas you've got to collect, as well as I mentioned, you have Patrick socks, which again are little sort of side collectibles that you find out through the mission, and that if you collect 10 of them and give them to Patrick, he will give you a golden spatula. So everything, there's a reason to collect everything. It's a platforming collectathon. A lot of people don't really like collectathons. I do. I love games that say here's a big mission. Go and find all the collectibles in this mission and go do all the platforming. I love that sort of thing, and it keeps me busy, keeps me interested, and I like the idea of I can come back to older levels. Like if there's an area that I can't get to yet because I don't have a double jump, or I've not got the right character, or haven't got the right ability for SpongeBob, then I can come back later once I have that ability and go to that other level and to see what I've missed, to see if there's any Patrick socks or if there's a spatula here or something like that I can collect to help me on further on with the game. So overall, it's a very sort of fun, sort of progressive sort of level. The collectibles work well. There's a point to all of them, and you want to be finding them all. And one of the upsides I find is that what I used to do is that if I ever needed a few more sort of shiny objects, but I didn't have enough, I would kill myself. So I jump off the edge of a level, which, by the way, killing yourself in this game is actually really funny. If you decide to jump out of a level, so you jump out of, you have a little boundary for all the levels. So if you decide to jump out of that boundary or jump out of a cliff, SpongeBob doesn't die. A real hand, comes out the side of the screen, grabs Spongebob and pulls him out of the screen and plumps him back down onto the level. And again, it's just exactly like the TV show. When the little sailors sort of like sailor's hand comes in and like just moves the screen along. It's very fourth wall breaking. I love it. But I would do that because once you died, all the enemies and all the boxes and crates that you destroyed, and all the sort of shiny objects would respawn. So I would kill myself, come back, collect all the shiny objects, and if I didn't have enough, again I would just rinse and repeat. And that's how I did that to kind of boost, shall we say, my way through getting all these golden spatulas off Mr. Krabs. Was that I'd play for the levels, and if I ever needed some more, if I was a little bit off, I would go off, get myself killed by a robot, or jump out of bounds of a mission, and then all the sort of collectibles would respawn, like all the shiny objects and crates, smash them, collect all the shiny objects again, either rinse and repeat if need be, or I would spend all my money on Mr. Krabs to get more golden spatulas. So again, there's a point to it all, and I enjoyed that sort of back and forth, the sort of collectibles and everything had a point. I just enjoyed that immensely. The boss battles are fun, if a bit challenging and irritating at times. Again, these boss battles are very much for the time, are very much old-fashioned in their way of like nowadays. And I mentioned this with the King Kong episode that I did a couple of weeks ago. But games back in the day didn't hold your hand. Nowadays, games hold your hand a lot, and it kind of feels like a pattern here that I'm going back and I'm playing a lot of games that were less hand-holdy. Trust me, I'm not doing that on purpose. Even though it might seem like it, I'm generally not going back and playing games that are not hand-holdy. I promise you that. It just seems at the moment that's what I'm looking for, like subconsciously. But nowadays, a lot of games, they hold your hand. They tell you what to do. You're constantly getting notifications. You're constantly getting hints. Like, for example, currently I'm playing, just for fun. This is not for review. This is generally just for me. I'm playing Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, I think it's called. Again, I love the game. I love the Lego games. I've spoke about nausea about the Lego games. But those games, they are very sort of hinty. And again, I know they're for kids, but they're very much like everything is a hint. Like I'm constantly being told how to use certain abilities or certain suits for Batman or Robin, and I'm like, I already know this. I've already done it 100 times. I know how to destroy golden bricks, and I learned about it in other sort of Lego games. I know how to destroy golden bricks. I know how to destroy silver bricks. You don't need to keep telling me. I know, and even if you take the hints off, you're still getting constant reminders by other characters of like, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. And I don't mind hand holding, but when it's overly in your face, constant of like, do this, do that, maybe try this, maybe try that. I'm like, I know you don't have to keep telling me. And again, I know most games now allow you to take the hints off, but like I said, even when they take the hints off, those games still parade you constantly with like, try this, try that, think of this, think of that, and it's just annoying. So it's nice to play a game where it tells you once or tells you a few times, and if you're interested, you can kind of go into the controls in the menu, or if you had an older game, you can look in sort of the manual and find out how to do it. You know what I mean? But it's not constantly in your face. Coming back to SpongeBob, these boss battles are very old-fashioned. They're very much of like non-hand-holdy. It's very much the fact of we won't tell you how to defeat the boss. You have to figure that out for yourself. So, for example, the first sort of boss you fight is the Jellyfish King, and I died a few times to the Jellyfish King, because as I died, I was trying different ways of like, can I go up to the boss and hit him? No, I can't. I lose health. Okay. Can I jump and hit him? Okay, no, I can't. What can I do? What powers can I use? So I tried to get underneath him before he tried to hit me. I tried to press the Y button to do a kind of uppercut. That didn't work. So it was me sort of sitting there, sort of trying new things, learning, and eventually I figured it out. What you have to do is that when the Jellyfish King bounces off the ground, all of his electricity will go out of his body and go across the level. So when he hits the ground, you jump up and you do a spin kick, and that will damage him. And you do that 3 times, and then the Jellyfish King will be sort of destroyed, defeated, and then you can kind of collect the raw jelly for Squidward, right? It was the same for all the other missions. There's a mission where you fight, I think it's a robot version of Sandy, and again, you're not really told what to do. You got to figure it out. And again, as the game goes on, you fight a robot version of Patrick, which that one was really, really irritating. And that's what I mentioned. Like they're challenging because they don't hold your hand. You have to kind of rinse, repeat, live, die, repeat. You've got to try new things. What doesn't work, die, try something else. You know what I mean? Um, and I like that. I like trying to figure it out. Like, don't get me wrong, it does get irritating especially as you get on, as the bosses get a lot more hard and they have a lot more health. It does get a lot more irritating. What I like is that after each boss has like 3 widgets of health, so you'll have it goes from red to yellow to green. So once you've took out the 3 green widgets, there'll be like a little cutscene, and the level might change, or the character you play might change, or vice versa, or both at the same time. And then you'll have to use a different tactic to defeat him. But what I like is the fact of, if you die any of that stage, you're not sent back to the full at the beginning, and that enemy's got full health again. It's not like that. It's very much the fact of after each chunks. After each chunk of 3 widgets are destroyed, and you have the cutscene, you have a checkpoint. So even if you die, you sent back to that last checkpoint, so you won't have to constantly start all over again of how to defeat it. So I like that. I love how it's at least fair. At least knows, okay, this might be a bit difficult. So we're not going to sort of make it a bit harder for you. We're not going to make it a bit more tedious. We're going to give you a bit of a helping hand. Again, I like that. It's fun, and that kind of takes away the irritation a little bit. Still a little bit irritating, but not as much, because you don't have to start from the very, very, very beginning. So I do enjoy that. What else? And the downside, only downside I have is the annoying repetitive dialogue. So for everything about this game that I love, the only sort of thing that I could find I really don't like about this game is the repetitive dialogue from Spongebob and the other playable characters. Like, for example, every time you pick up health, SpongeBob would be like, "I feel like a new sponge," or he'd be like, "Oh, I smell as fresh as a spring breeze." And it's cute at first, and it's funny at first, but after he repeats it, sorry, man, I'm all of a sudden I've caught hiccups. Hopefully that won't mess with the sound. But as I was saying about being annoying for SpongeBob, every time you pick up a health pickup, he says the same dialogue all the time. And then you have the announcers in the boss battle, and you have this fish sort of anchorman from the TV show, who be like, "Oh my God, how is Patrick or SpongeBob gonna defeat this character? Oh, he's changed again. Oh, he's changed again. Oh, I wonder how SpongeBob is going to defeat him this time." And it's over and over. So you've got that, as well as the irritation of the boss fights, and it's that constant loop in your head of like, "I'm going insane. I'm going insane. I'm going insane." That's the only thing the downside I have about this game is the repetitive dialogue. At first it's funny, at first it's cute, and eventually, as you get through the level, it's just, oh God, it's just, I want to die. This is so annoying. My brain hurts. Again, I love SpongeBob. I'm not dogging on SpongeBob, but his voice and the constant repetitiveness of the same words over and over again, really, it gets really jarring, and to the point where it's like, I don't. Please stop. Kill me. Kill me. One of those. So that's the only real downside I have about this game. The only real sort of negative comment I have about this game, apart from everything else being perfect and really, really enjoyable. This game is good. It is really, really good game. It just, happens to be the last sort of, the dialogue gets a bit repetitive, but apart from that, overall good. So my overall thoughts of this game is that it's a fun classic platformer, definitely worth the remake/remaster. I'm not really sure. I think it's a remaster, because they took the old game and they redid it for a modern audience. So I think it's a remaster, but I'm not really sure. But either way, it's definitely worth the remake/remaster treatment. Makes me hope for a more THQ reboots, from their licensed TV show games. Like, I'd like to see more Nickelodeon. Like, I'd like to see them bring back Tak. A lot of people don't know about Tak. Tak was a TV show on Nickelodeon about, he was like a little caveman, and it revolved around voodoo and stuff like that, and it was really, really fun. I don't really remember much of it, because I don't remember watching it as that a lot. but it was a game that I did play on the PlayStation 2. So I'd like them to go back and rebring tack the Jimmy Neutron games, or the other SpongeBob games, the Nickelodeon sort of games that they brought out, like Danny Phantom and all that. They also had like Cartoon Network, so Ed, Ed and Eddie, Dexter's Laboratory, Robot Boy. There were tons of games, and I'd like to see them bring those sort of games back, as well as the racing games, because I know they've got the Nickelodeon kart racers, which I haven't played them yet, apart from I played the first one on my brother's Switch. But I'd like to go and play those games, and there's loads of things and other reboots and other old games, license-based games they could bring back. And I'm not just saying that because of I have a series on old license-based games, and it gives me more content. But also generally because I would just love to see more games from my childhood brought back that I currently don't have or have no means of being able to play them. And so it'd be nice to be able to go back and play those games on a modern console, even if they didn't remaster them, even if they just sort of even if they didn't remake them, if they just remastered them and be like, well, we put like brand new textures and brand new quality of life sort of things in. It's the same game from your past, just like 4K, Ultra HD, all that sort of pizzazz and gleam and glitter. I'd be happy with even that. So even if it was like a simple sort of like, oh, we just better graphics, better quality, better resolution, I'd be fine with that. But it just kind of gives me hope that THQ will do a lot more reboots in the future. That they won't just do SpongeBob. I'm not saying that because I don't like SpongeBob. I obviously really, really do. But I just want to see more from these old sort of TV shows and cartoons. I don't know. The child in me just wants to see more. So my overall thoughts is buy this game and definitely install it. One thing that I'm doing now for my ratings of video games is that I'm basically going to do install or uninstall. So install is basically install it, play it, buy it, keep it, enjoy it, love it. Uninstall, don't bother with it. Don't give it a go. I don't recommend it, that sort of thing. But this game is definitely buy it, install it, play it. It's worth it. It's fun. It's interesting. It's a good platformer. It's good for kids. It's good for adults. There's something in here for everybody. If you're a SpongeBob fan or not, you'll enjoy the platforming. You'll enjoy the collectathon. You know what I mean? And I feel like Xbox and PlayStation are missing out on platforming games. I think we need more platforming games nowadays. Like I miss the days of Conker's Bad Fur Day, of Banjo-Kazooie. I miss those platforming sort of games. Rayman. Nobody talks about Rayman anymore. There's like Ubisoft did a few things near the end of the Xbox 360's lifespan, and then that's it. They just kind of stopped with Rayman, and they no longer do anything with him apart from Raving Rabbits, which again I don't class as Rayman because they're like an offshoot of Rayman. You know what I mean? So bring back Rayman. You know what I mean? I love Rayman. I had Rayman my dad had Rayman 3 on the PC. I remember playing that. I had Rayman on the Game Boy. I remember playing Rayman Legends on the Xbox One when it first came out. I remember playing Rayman Origins on the Xbox 360. So I love Rayman. Bring Rayman back. I know THQ don't own Rayman, but that's my point. I'm like, we need more platforming games, and I feel like this can be that slow sort of dredge. Be like, okay, SpongeBob, it's a platforming game. There's a hype in it. There's people that like it, are interested, and then THQ will look in doing more platforming games, or other publishers will be like, oh, SpongeBob's doing really, really, really well. That's a platforming game. Maybe we should look into doing more platforming games. You know what I mean? So hopefully this pushes it in that direction. So definitely overall, buy it, install it. It's worth it, and just let THQ know that you're interested. Really, put your money where your mouth is and show like, look, I'm interested. This is the game that I want. I want more games like this. Please make more games like this. And that's my final message, really, to anybody. If anybody's listening to this at THQ Nordic or Purple Lamp, make more SpongeBob games. Make more platformers, and please, please, please beg THQ, and I beg THQ, make more TV license-based games from the Nickelodeon archive. Bring back Tack, bring back Danny Phantom, bring back Jimmy Neutron, bring back all those games. I want to play them again on modern consoles. Fairly Odd Parents, you know what I mean? Like, bring them back. I want them, please, 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 please. Right, so that's me driveling, and that's the review over. I'm going to go off to the end now to wrap it up nicely, and I'll see you all in a little bit. Right, so here we are at the end. Hopefully, you beans, you folks, you enjoyed this episode. Let me know. Did you play Battle for Bikini Bottom on the PlayStation 2? Real Xbox, did you play the original game? Do you have much memories of it? Are you a fan of SpongeBob? Do you not like SpongeBob? It's never been something that's ever really sort of um, interested you. Again, by all means, let me know on Twitter at Nerdstalgic, Nerdstalgic_pod. I'd love to hear off you and hear your feedback. Again, if you're listening to this on YouTube, again, all the same on YouTube. If you like, disagree, if you love SpongeBob, you hate SpongeBob, anything, any sort of feedback, will be grateful. So put it down in the comment section down below. I'd love to read all your comments. And yeah, so you can find this podcast, the Nerdstalgic podcast, on Twitter. You can also find me on Anchor. You can find me on Google Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcast. You can find me on Audible, and as I mentioned, you can find me on YouTube as well. If you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating for 1 to 5 stars. 5 stars, best thing you've heard in your life. You love SpongeBob, and you think I did it so much justice that you want to live in a pineapple under the sea. 1 star. You worst thing you've heard in your life. You hate SpongeBob, you hate me, and you think I'm just as annoying as the famous Sponge, or as the French would say, Bob le Sponge. So whatever you feel like is fair, 1 to 5 stars, I will appreciate greatly. And yeah, so thank you all for listening to my ramblings and my manic energy as I talked about SpongeBob. I really love this series, and I just love SpongeBob in general. And overall, I just kind of hope that this can be sort of a start of something new, and that THQ then decide to kind of re-release all their older stuff, or even just do more sort of SpongeBob stuff. I'll be here for whatever they decide to do, because as I mentioned, I just love what they do. So I just hope whatever they do, they carry on, because they're just doing absolutely incredible. So that's been me. I've been your host, Luke. Thank you for listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast. I greatly appreciate you and your time. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. So bye-bye, beans.